I wouldn't presume to write a book about the history of golf if I hadn't read all that and more, because what do you know? What do you even have the right to say? You know what I mean? If you haven't read into it a little more than somewhat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Whole Story Podcast. Jonathan, how are we doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad. Get to meet new people, chat about golf. Always a good day.
It is always a good day, man. This was good. You made a comment a while back. You said, "Man, we need more golf art authors on this," and I feel like we're kind of hitting a streak. We talked to Nate Oxman, and now this week we have Stephen Proctor joining us for an episode.
It's ironic since I don't really read books, but it's always interesting to hear the stories that they've had to tell.
I think that's why you mentioned it, because you said they have the best stories. Because
they really do.
Yeah, and we talked to Stephen about it. He does tons of research and everything whenever he goes into it. It's a great episode. I think everybody's going to enjoy it. Did you learn anything new?
Learned who John Ball Jr. was.
Yeah. And I learned that we really, really need to go do that Old Time Marsh Trail.
Oh, man, I didn't even know that was a thing.
22 courses.
Yeah, I mean, the list keeps getting longer and longer of all the places that you want to go. I don't...
As we were about to sign on, you said, "Hey, Brandon just sent us something else for Bandon."
Yeah, exactly. Life is getting in the way of our golf in a very real way. Every time I hear people take all these trips, I'm like, I feel like I've got a lot of time, but how does this happen? Where do these people go?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very nice. So great episode. Stephen has written a lot of stuff, and I told him I was at Royal Dornoch, not playing golf, but happened to see a book by Lauren Rubenstein, and it had Stephen listed as doing the, I think, introduction or something. So it's fun just to see these connections and make friends in the golf space. If nothing else, just I don't know, it's an honor to meet these people. So it's a lot of fun. So great episode. I think you guys will enjoy it. But we always need to thank the friends of the program. Jonathan, you and I are both rocking some pretty sweet Be Dratty shirts.
Yep.
Very good stuff that we get to proudly wear from Be Dratty, Zero Restriction, Fairway and Green, all the good folks there at Summit Golf Brands. They do incredible stuff. Their fall things are coming out. I've even seen some teasers for their spring 26 stuff. So they're doing great things. I saw Lee Norwood the other day, who we met down at the Shindig. But our buddy Dan Drollinger, he's just the man. So, and I think soon we'll be talking to Billy Dratty on an episode. So that'll be a lot of fun.
That should be a good time.
Yeah, so if you go to any of their websites and you use the code BESTBALL20, they'll give you 20% off. They were kind enough to do that for you, our listeners. So another friend of the program, Western Birch, custom golf tees. You get your logo on them, customize them with any colors you want. Go to westernbirch.com. Lewis and his team will take great care of you. We've seen that because we've sent friends to them, and they were amazed by the turnaround and just the ease to work with them. So, yeah, Western Birch, thank you guys. Without any further ado, Jonathan, anything to add as we jump into our episode?
Two things for our sponsors. I have a little bit of grape jelly spilled on my Be Dratty shirt, so I'm going to try to figure that one out. And tomorrow we're going to spray some Western Birch tees across the tee boxes at Fort Jackson. So, yeah, I mean, we people may think, why do you guys keep talking about this? Because we use it and we love it. I mean, everywhere I go now, I've got a polo on or a vest. I'm a vest guy almost.
It is 90 plus degrees where we live right now. So
whenever you mention the fall option, I'm sitting there thinking the air conditioning inside's cold, but outside it's just blistering hot. So I don't know how excited fall version is.
Vest season is fast approaching. Not fast enough, but it's coming.
It will be upon
it is
us.
coming. So anyway, grab you some gear from all those brands. It's fun. Anyway, without further ado, here's our interview with Stephen Proctor. Y'all enjoy. All right, Stephen Proctor, welcome to the Whole Story Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. Well, We know you do a lot of things. Obviously, author. You were just talking about it. You have your own podcast with Jim Hartzell, and you guys talk about golf books and all the great things around that. And we were talking a little bit about you completed the Old Tom Morris Trail back in 22. And I do want to ask you that and just about Scotland, because I know that's something that you love. But we ask everybody when we first get them on, like, tell us, how did you get into golf? Like, when did that become a thing in your life?
It's an interesting story, Robby, actually. When I was about 16 or so, my best friend, who I've known for all 68 years of my life, lived next door to me growing up. His father was a big golfer. He played golf. And I spent one summer playing golf with him while I was actually working part-time in the meat room of a local grocery store. And at the end of that summer, helping to carry in a side of beef, I got a hernia. And so I stopped playing golf. And then I was off to college, and I never got back to golf again until I was, I believe, 39, when the publisher of my newspaper walked into my office with a set of golf clubs and sat them down in front of my desk and said, "Hey, you're going to take up golf," because I've taken up golf. We would go to the racetrack together a lot on the weekends. Horse racing was my main hobby before golf, and he announced that I was taking up golf, and not only that, that he had arranged for me to get lessons, that he had lined up 8 lessons for me. And all I had to do to get these 8 lessons was to edit the story that this assistant golf pro had written, with the goal of getting it in Golf Digest magazine. And, so that's how I got started. I edited the story, I got my 8 lessons, and started playing golf. And like so many people who get started on the game, I went completely psychotic for golf, I think it would be fair to say. And that has been something that has not stopped since then. I was 39 or 40 then. I'm 68 now, so it's kind of been a 28-year binge that's ongoing, and it's had a lot of different directions over that time.
Was it a good story? Did it get in the magazine?
It was a heartfelt story, but there's a difference between being a golf professional and being a writer. And so, right. yes, it did get in the magazine. In the end, it was recast, as Damon Runyon would say, a little more than somewhat. But it did get in, and I'm a newspaper professional, so I can get something in a magazine. It's not that's easily done. Breaking 100 is a lot harder. But anyway, Mason Champion was my teacher. What a great name. And what a great teacher he was. He was, Mason, with every lesson, he would assign you a book, as well as, number one, he would bring you a prepared, written out detail of all what you were learning today at your lesson, which I still have in a file and I still consult all these years later, so that he could go over in your mind while you were practicing what he had taught you on the tee that day. And then he also assigned books, and the first book he assigned me was a book by George Pepper that's kind of like a coffee table book about the history of the game. Mason just believed that if you didn't respect the history and traditions of the game, you would never really fully appreciate it in the way that you could and should. And so he started with that, and that was part of what got me going down the pathway I ended up going down, because there were a lot of cool stories in the book about young Tommy, about John Ball, about other people, and eventually I wanted to tell those stories myself, and did tell a lot of them. But so I give Mason a lot of credit for setting me on the pathway to being what I would call a proper golfer, a golfer with a capital G, someone who doesn't just play the game, but who respects and understands the game, and I think gets more out of it because of that than, say, somebody that plays in a charity event a couple times a year, which is still wonderful golf. Nothing in any way diminishing that.
Well, we like, a lot of the history of the game and the stories that come from it. And so someone like yourself, like, we could probably spend hours talking to, learning about, and hearing stories about what you've learned in your research for all your books and things. where are you inspired to find the next story? Like, is it someone else, mention something, or you hear about something and you're like, I want to dig into that more?
That's a great question. I read constantly about the history of golf, so I've probably read 275 or 300 books about the game over the course of the last 30 years, which, it's been a kind of a directed study of the game and what I would consider to be all of its dimensions. There's a thing that's called the Classics of Golf Library that was created by the great golf writer Herbert Warren Wind and a man named Robert McDonald. And when they put that library together, they selected the 69 books that they thought were the seminal books of golf all the way across the spectrum. So from instruction to memoir to biography to literature to all the different areas that you could study. And when I decided I was going to do golf history, I just bought that library and read the 69 books all in a row. And then I started looking at the bibliographies of those books and then reading into instruction, reading into literature, reading into architecture and agronomy and all those different areas to try to develop what I consider I'm kind of a weirdo, I guess, but I wouldn't presume to write a book about the history of golf if I hadn't read all that and more, because what do you know? What do you even have the right to say? You know what I mean? If you haven't read into it a little more than somewhat. So I've been doing that, and that's really just given me an appreciate the game and helped me to. When you're a professional newspaper man like I have been all my life, you read for story. So you're reading to learn the truths and the background and the facts and the perspective, but you're reading for the nuggets that make a great story or for the little angle that makes a great story. And so I kind of naturally stumble across the things because of all that background and expertise in terms of newspapers of just finding stories. And so I found 3 so far, and they've been really, really fun to do. And I've gotten a lot of pleasure out of it, and the life of a golf historian, which has also been fun. And that's why I'm on here.
You would have thought they would have found an extra couple books and made it an even 72 par for the number of books. Like, you stop at 69. You couldn't find 3 books to make this an even 72?
I think they were modeling it after Crail or any of the sporting courses in Scotland. The best courses in Scotland have a par below 70, if you ask me. So maybe that was it. But that's a funny thought, and actually, you would think they might have.
Well, you've got 3 books that are published, so maybe those are the next 3.
There you go. I'd like to think that myself, but golf books are super hard to sell, and it's generally speaking, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people, history doesn't seem to interest them. They just want to be in the present, and I get that. So history is a difficult sell at times, but I feel like it's got all the lessons that you want. And that's why I've always been drawn to it. No matter what I've done, whether it was, I've geeked out on different things in my life, chess being the very first one, and then horse racing. And always I've started with the history and gradually become obsessed with the history of the enterprise. I don't know what that is about me. I just like old things and old stories. So I've always been that way.
With all of you reading and looking at the history of golf, have you found, is there one character that sort of slipped through the cracks, that if you could highlight that individual in terms of whether it's something that they've done and contributed to the overall game of golf and no one knows, or maybe just an interesting fellow that more people should know about, who would that person be?
I've already written the book that includes that person. And I would say when I first started studying golf history, the person who stood out to me the most was John Ball Jr. And I don't know if either of you two have ever heard of John Ball Jr. It will be no disgrace if you haven't. I spent 6 years in a row asking every golfer I played with in the United Kingdom, where John Ball was raised and was a hero, and in the United States both, have you ever heard of John Ball Jr.? And not one of them, not one person ever had ever heard of him. John Ball Jr. is one of the greatest golfers that has ever played. He won the amateur championship 8 different times, starting in the 1880s and ending in 1912 or 13. I won't remember the dates because I've done books in between. But the amateur championship is by far the most difficult golf event to win. You have to win 7 18-hole matches in a row and then a 36-hole match. And you guys play golf. You know that in any 18-hole match, some person can get hot for 4 or 5 holes and then you're gone. To do that 8 times over all those years, in addition to that modest accomplishment, he was the first amateur to win the Open Championship in 1890. And that really set off the growth of golf outside of Scotland and sent it spiraling all over the world, mainly because of that win. Well, it was a big impetus. The great Scotsman Willie Park Jr., for instance, was a club maker when John Ball won the Open in 1890, and for the next couple years he had to stop playing because he had too many orders. He couldn't get the orders filled fast enough for clubs from England and had to quit playing. So when I wrote The Long Golden Afternoon, which is the second of the 2 books I wrote, which is just a book about how golf leaves Scotland and moves around the world, and who are the heroes that make it happen. Because what you've seen in your own lifetime, Robby and Jonathan, is the same thing that's happened through history. Some player, like Tiger Woods, comes along, raises the standard of the game, literally lifts the game up onto his or her shoulders, carries it into another age, and that's how it progresses. That's how it's always progressed from the absolute beginning. And John Ball Jr. was one of those players. And when he won that championship, it just set off the growth of the game in a way that's hard to contemplate. So that's the person, and I did end up, I almost wrote a biography of him, but I didn't think I'd be able to sell that. He was too obscure. So I made him the hero, one of the many heroes of the larger story of how golf becomes a worldwide game and a modern game like you know it today after it leaves Scotland in the late 1880s or so.
So you mentioned John Ball as someone who has helped change the game, but you've got a book, I believe, coming out later this year, Matchless, The Moment That Made Women's Golf. Tell us a little bit about that, what that story is going to be about, and why people should, one, go ahead and pre-order it, but get ready to read it.
Well, that's a great question. And I do need to say one thing is you have the correct title that I started with. But as I evolved the book, I decided that title wasn't the right one. So I changed it to Joyce Weathered, Glenna, Collette, and the Rise of Women's Golf. Because, when you do a book, one thing you have to do is get people to read it, before you send it in to be published. So I have a test group of readers that's pretty eclectic, some women, a champion golfer who just likes books, some former people that I know that played game, etc., etc. And they just have gut reactions to things. And their first gut reaction was, well, because the book focuses a lot on an individual match, and that's why I chose the title, The Moment That Made Women's Golf. But they were saying, the book presents a broad history of the women's game. You're not prepared for that by that title. And so they suggested I change it, which I did, which is just an interesting thing for people who wonder how books come to be.
That'll be a good trivia question some way down the road. What was the original title?
There you go. And you'll be the one that knows the answer, Robby and Jonathan.
We'll get it.
You'll be ready to take Buffalo Wild Wings by storm. Anyway.
Us and our one listener.
Yeah, exactly. So this book is about Joyce Weathered and Glenna Collette, who are, Joyce is an English woman golfer and Glenna is an American woman golfer. And they both started playing supremely gifted golf in the early 1920s. Both won their first championship in 1922 and both walked off the stage in 1935. They had an intense rivalry with one another over almost all of those years. And so the book tells the story of how these two women raised the level of the women's game to such a degree that they could draw a crowd of 10,000 to a match in 1929 to watch them play against one another. And when something like that happens, people that are out to make money off things, they notice that. They noticed that 10,000 people attended the first Curtis Cup with Glenna and Joyce led their respective teams onto the field. They noticed that 10,000 people turned out to watch them at Troon almost, and that 10,000 people turned out to watch them at St. Andrews in 1929 when they had the greatest match that's ever been played by two women. And they also noticed when Joyce came to the United States and made a grand tour of the U.S. in 1935, just the way Harry Vardon had done in 1900, the crowds that she could draw, and that had a lot to do with the birth of the LPGA. And the LPGA probably would have gotten started earlier than it did had it not been for the intervention of that Second World War. And you'll note that the first effort to ever make an LPGA, which didn't succeed, started exactly the year that war ended in 1944. And in 1950, the one that would last came along after sort of this, the sputtering history of the first one. But that's what the book is about. And it's also about how at the age that these two women were playing, it's wise to keep in mind that's exactly the same time the unfolding of the women's game happens exactly the same time as the suffrage movement, where women are fighting to get the right to vote, fighting to earn their place in what was then and still is in a lot of ways a patriarchal world. And so the golf that these two women played turned out to be like the living example of their point. Give us a chance that we can play as well as any man. And Bobby Jones has said on more than one occasion that the best golfer he ever saw, man or woman, is Joyce Weatherly. And it is my opinion that she is the supreme, the closest person to perfection in golf ever. Others may have matched her, but I do not think she can be surpassed.
Very nice. One thing you mentioned earlier was, I guess, the lack or not as much interest in the history of the game or reading books about golf history. How do we change that? How do we get people not, like you said, just focused on, hey, I want to go out and play golf, but actually learning about the history of it, how we got to where we are?
That is the supreme question. I'm so happy that you asked that question, because that's the whole point of what I'm doing. As I said earlier, I read a lot of golf books. Most of the books that are written about golf, while they break ground and do important things, are very, very tedious to read. And even a person like me, who's dedicated to reading them for the purpose of producing another book, sometimes struggles with the task. So the idea that an average person would read them is just not going to happen. So one of the reasons that I started wanting to write golf books is when I started reading them and really wanting to learn about the history of the game, I couldn't find books that could be read by an average person. Every person who follows baseball knows who Christy Mathewson is and Honus Wagner and all of those people. They all know. No golfers know anything at all about the heroes of their game. And I just have always found that distressing as a fan, as a player. And my whole mission is to write books that you can read. Write a book that's told to you as a tale. These books are researched as accurately and academically as any book you can find on golf, and I'll stand by that. But the books are told to you as a story. There are no footnotes. There are nothing in there. If you want to find out, there's always notes on chapters. So there'll be 20 or 30 pages telling you where I got everything if that's something you want to know. And it's all there for you to find. But it's just a tale. It's just a story. And the whole reason that I even write them is so that the next time I ask somebody on a tee box, have you ever heard of John Ball Jr., somebody will say, yeah, he's the greatest match play golfer in the history of our game. And then I'll feel like I accomplished something. But that hasn't happened yet, but I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, I had heard of his name, but that was only because doing more research on you and your books, I saw that was the subject of one of them. But if you had asked, like, hey, give me a lengthy description of what he's done, yeah, I would fall into that category as well.
Yeah, everyone did. No, it's not known, and it's not known because the right kinds of stories haven't been written often enough. There are some really good ones. The Greatest Game Ever Played by Mark Frost, although I wouldn't say that is a history in the sense of he takes the liberty of providing the quotes based on the research that he did, not using actual quotations that were written down by someone who heard them spoken, which is what I do. But, they still bring you the basic story of Francis Ouimet in a wonderful way. And so there's just not enough.
Well, you're probably, just like every other history teacher in America right now, realizing that no one knows what happened in the past until the day they were born. I asked a kid today, like, do you know who Bo Jackson is? He's like, who?
Who?
Like, what? You don't know who Bo Jackson is?
It's amazing, and it's, this is a different topic entirely, but I think when you're studying the history of golf, one thing you can't help but realize is the amazing quality of the education that what you would call English public school boys received in the 1900s. Somebody like Bernard Darwin, who is the golf writer of the times from 1907 to 1953 and the greatest golf writer ever. Those guys and women were so incredibly well educated compared to a modern American student, or a student really probably anywhere in this wide world. The quality of education has declined a lot, and the consequences of that are becoming increasingly evident, if you ask me. But
now you just need something that's clickable, chat GPT in 150 words, right?
That's exactly right. All done by AI
sounds like
sooner or later.
Sounds like more teachers need to be assigning summer reading that includes golf history books.
I would like to see them assign Monarch of the Green, which I think is the perfect place to start. That's my first book. That's about, one of the things I said earlier is that the game has always moved along with heroes. And the first hero is young Tommy. Young Tommy wins the Open when he's 17, when he's 18, when he's 19. They don't have a trophy, so it isn't played when he wins it when he's 20. When he's 21, he wins it again. So, he was just such an enormous sensation. He was just the modern person that you want to think of when you're trying to think of Tommy is Seve Ballesteros, swashbuckling, fearless, all out on every swing, and that's the thing that set the game going. That's it was a parochial pastime played only by Scotsmen, and not all Scotsmen for that matter. Before Tommy came along. And after Tommy came along, it just went berserk. And that's what the story of Monarch of the Green is, just how young Tommy emerges as the game's first hero, and how, that is the beginning of the pathway directly to Tiger Woods from Tommy. And you could name the heroes of every generation in between. And it's so that's the place to start. It's a short book. It's very easy to read, and highly recommend that to people who just want to, dip their toe in the water of golf history, especially if you are going to take a trip to Scotland. If you are one of the zillions of American golfers looking forward to your round at St. Andrews next year, this is the book you want to read before you go, because you will know so much about St. Andrews, about the history that unfolded there. When you go to the cemetery to see Tommy's graveyard, which everyone does, you will then be able to approach that with the right spirit, I think. So that's what I think.
Well, Jonathan and I did get the opportunity to go to St. Andrews and play this past April, and visited the cemetery there in St. Andrews, and we were soaking in the history left and right. And I kind of wonder if a pilgrimage or a trip over to Scotland is maybe the spark that people need. One, yes, you get to see and play all these amazing courses, but is that something that you think, and I know you've had travel there, and we were talking earlier, you did the old Tom Morris Trail a few years back, but is making that trip, playing a little golf, seeing the history in person, something that might help spark that interest in people?
I definitely agree with that, Robby and Jonathan. When you're in St. Andrews, and I'm sure you felt this way, you're just surrounded by the history of the game, embraced by it. No one you meet isn't familiar with it. Every restaurant you eat in, every club you attend has great images all over the wall of these fabulous moments from the history of the game. It's a spiritual experience to go into that cemetery. And, the monument to Tommy is just amazing. That's a cemetery where the richest and most nobles, gentry of Scotland have been buried for more than 500 years. And the biggest and most dominant tomb in it is that of a teenage working class kid, which was paid for by those people, which I will never get over as long as I live. The idea that nobles and gentry dipped into their own pocket to build that monument. What do you think they witnessed to make them want to do something like that? That's what made me want to write the book. I'm like, that's just crazy. That, if you understand class-conscious United Kingdom in that era, you realize what an astonishing and extraordinary thing that is. And you're like, well, I got to figure out what that was all about. Anyway, yes, you are. And I do think it makes you want to know more about it because of that experience, for sure.
Yeah, the mere fact that it's allowed to be there is a statement in and of itself.
Exactly.
So, with all the books and all the reading, and I'm assuming if you're like me, as I used to be many years ago, little notes all across the house,
Yes.
little side pieces. What's the next story that needs to be told?
Well, the next story that I want to tell, which is different than probably needs to be told, is I really want to write a biography of Bernard Darwin. Darwin is the witness to the whole unfolding of the history of the game. He like, as I say, he became the professional correspondent of the Times in 1907, and he retired in 1953. So that means he saw everyone play live, from Harry Vardon all the way through Ben Hogan. So that's something to contemplate. Not only that, he was competing in the amateur championship himself in the 1890s against John Ball Jr. and Harold Hilton. And he became friends with the people who had seen Tommy play. So in a lot of ways, he's the person that through whom you can see the whole history of the game unfold. And he's has an appreciation of the game that I think not many people have. So that's what I want to do. Whether or not I'll be able or permitted to do it, that's a whole separate question. You have to have a publisher who decides that that's a commercially viable enterprise and wants to buy it from you. And you have to come up with somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to finance the research. The book will not pay that much. You can be sure of that. It will not pay 1/5 of that. But if you can get people to finance the research, you could do it. So that's what I'm trying to do. And Darwin is also, if you have never read something by Bernard Darwin, you should go and find an essay called The People in Front and read that. And you'll just be laughing your head off. It's just about how we all absolutely loathe the people that are playing in front of us and all the things they do that annoy us no end and make us want to murder them. He just has an understanding of the game that few people achieve from writing about it, from playing it, and a passion for it that few people have. And he's the inspiration for every single thing I have done in golf and the reason I'm even doing what I'm doing. So that's what I'd like to do next. We'll see.
Sounds like a great concept and a great story that we need to go check out. But besides Bernard Darwin, who are some other golf writers that you admire and that you look up to?
Well, my partner, Jim Hartzell, his book, When Revelation Comes, I think is one of the best modern golf books. It's an incredibly touching story of the way in which his relationship with Scotland and a trip to Scotland helped him to heal after the incredibly tragic death of his son at the age of 20. His son was an enormously promising golfer, Jordan Hartzell. So I think as far as modern golf writing is concerned, the two towering figures in the game are Michael Bamberger, and his book, To the Links Land, is in my top 5 golf books I've ever read. I love that book. And Lorne Rubinstein, the great Canadian golf writer, his book, A Season in Dornoch, I think is one of the best golf books of that, maybe the best golf book of that genre ever done. And Lorne is just an incredibly thoughtful man. So is Bamberger. So those are my 2 biggies I like. I do like Mark Frost's books. I like his book, The Match, too, which is about this incredible match between Harvey Ward and Ken Venturi and Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson that unfolds at Cypress Point with a huge bet by Eddie Lowry, the caddy for Francis Ouimet in the 1913 Open. So that's a good one. There's a lot of good golf writing being done now, and that's excellent.
I love that one recommendation you said, Lorne Rubinstein. So I just got back from the Highlands of Scotland. I was there with our daughter and our youth choir from our church. And golf was not on the agenda, but whenever there was a free time and we were close, I said, hey, we're going to pull off and see something amazing. So I did pull off there at Royal Dornoch and walked inside, and I did snap a picture of A Season in Dornoch by Lorne because your name caught my eye. I'm like, wait a minute, we're about to talk to Stephen. So it was pretty good. Jonathan, I don't know if I told you this. So Lauren wrote the book. Then it has forward by Sean Connery, introduction by Stephen Proctor, and afterward by Tom Coyne. So that's good company right there.
Those are some decent bookends.
Yes, you know when I was playing the old Tom Morris Trail, it so happened that it is now, as I'm sure you guys know, can be incredibly difficult to secure tee times at some of the higher end courses in Scotland. Dornoch was a very, very difficult tee time, and the Bonnie Wee Golf, which was sponsoring him on the trail, was having some difficulty securing me a time at Dornoch. And so I did what I would normally do in such a situation. I reached out to a friend and begged. So I wrote to Lauren, who I knew somewhat casually from, he had made some nice comments about Monarch of the Green, and we had played one round of golf together down at Jupiter, where he lives in the wintertime. He lives most of his life in Canada, as I mentioned. But and he not only got a tee time for me, but played with me. So I got to go around Dornoch with Lauren, which is like right up there among the greatest golfing days of my life. And he arranged for the two of us to have a joint reading at the Dornoch bookshop. So he read from A Season in Dornoch, and I read from The Long Golden Afternoon. And, Lauren just treated me as kindly as it is possible to be treated by another human being. And then later, I happened to be in conversation with Jim Sitar, who is the founder of Back Nine Press, which is publishing a lot of new golf books. And he had this idea that he wanted to start republishing some out-of-print classic books. And he called me up to ask me, as a person who's read one or two golf books, if I had any suggestions as to classics that might be worth reprinting. And I suggested A Season in Dornoch, because it had gone out of print. You can't find it anywhere. Copies of it were really expensive, and that he decided in the end to do that. And Lauren was kind enough to ask me to write an introduction for it, because I had just recently gone on the old Tom Morris Trail, and we'd played together and so forth and so on. And so that's how that came about. But that's a great book. And I hope you get to go back and play Dornoch one day, because I would say, you can't include the old course in any ranking of golf courses. You need to separate that's sui generis. It's a thing unto itself, and it is the beginning of all things. So you can't really rate that. But if you rate golf courses after that, among the ones I've played, I would put Dornoch up the top, side by side with Cypress Point. That's the quality of golf course it is. I will say this: the way Dornoch walks, the scenes that unfold in front of you, what's around you, it's probably the greatest walk in golf, because it's unbelievable views everywhere and not that hilly to walk. Like Cruden Bay is a spectacular course, but it's a beast to walk. It's very, very hilly, and you have to be a pretty fit person to walk and carry your bag around Cruden Bay. But Dornoch is an easy walk and a beautiful walk, and I'm really only one hill to climb the whole time. So I hope you get to go back.
Yeah, it looked amazing, and yes, I do have a list of places in that area that I want to play, and I think I listed all of them.
I was going to say, I think every golf course you pass, we got that in a group text somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're all terrific. There's just golf off the beaten path in Scotland is the way to go. Don't go over there Bagdag hunting. That's my main suggestion to a traveler. Go over and play the modestly priced courses, like go play Tane and Goldsby and Brora and Ely and Crail and places like that. Those offer spectacularly fabulous golf at a very modest price by comparison to a Dornoch or a St. Andrews. And not only that, you can get a tee time. And, I recommend that approach. There's just so much great golf there. It's not necessary to go and chase the top 100 list to have a great time playing golf in Scotland or the United States, for that matter.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing, and I know we're getting off subject, but I think one thing I loved was, I think it was at Brora, because I made our group stop there, was if you pay a tee time and you're playing, you're basically granted temporary membership at that course for the day. So come in, have a meal, have a drink, but just the way golf culture is treated differently there. And I think they had a sign that, if you were going to play after hours, like here, text us and let us know, pay the fee, and just go have fun. Like,
there's so many honor box courses all over Scotland, tended by a single greenkeeper, Nobody's there. You go up, there's a box, you put your £5 note in, and you go play golf. Golf is a birthright in Scotland, and that's the difference between there and the United States. And I do think this is a totally different subject, but you should do a topic one day looking at private club rules in Scotland and England versus private club rules in the United States, because there's a lot of lessons for us to learn from them.
Yes, indeed.
You don't get what the rules are until you're already a member, so maybe that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is you can play golf at any private club in Scotland. Even the most exclusive private clubs like Muirfield have member days when the public can play. And I think America could take a lesson from that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how was the Old Tom Morris Trail back in 22?
That was the greatest experience of my golfing life, and it won't be topped. I mean, there's just no way it could be topped. First off, the courses themselves are spectacular. But the nicest thing about it is that the trail itself takes you the entire length and breadth of Scotland. If you do the trail the way it's arranged, and I didn't do that, you would start at Ashkernish, which is in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, on an island of South Uist. So it's a ways to get to Ashkernish. It's about 6.5 hour ferry ride from Oban if you take the ferry. I flew from Glasgow to another tiny little island called Benbecula, which is attached to South Uist, and had a taxi driver take me down to Ashkernish and drive me around the island the whole time I was there. It's nice when you're on a luxury trip as opposed to one you're planning yourself. But in any case, you start at Ashkernish. Ashkernish is a course that Old Tom laid out in 1891 in a very remote place, and it was rediscovered in the 2000s after having gone fallow. And it doesn't have a sprinkler system, is infrequently mowed, and is golf exactly as it was in the 1890s. I would say the greens are probably about 5 on a stimp meter, thank goodness, because they are so intensely undulating. And if you miss the green left or right, usually it's an irrecoverable spot. You couldn't even go down to get your ball. It's so far down into some crevice. So it's best if they hold a little. Great experience. And then you go from there to Dornoch, all the way down along the coast of the Murray Firth to Cruden Bay, then south to, Montrose and Carnoustie, and then into St. Andrews and East Lothian. So it's just an incredible golf experience. I was shuttled around in a car. I stayed at a luxury hotel every night, and I went to a luxury restaurant every afternoon and every evening. And so, I mean, I don't know. I felt like I was living pretty large. So it was great, and I felt like it really educated me too about the first golf architects. You really came to see, especially at Ashkernish, how holes had to be discovered, not made at the beginning. You had a barrow, a scythe, and a spade. That was everything you had, plus your imagination. So you had to go out and find a really amazing green site, just get it cut down to some reasonable height, and then figure out where a fairway that would be interesting could lead to that. Because you're not moving any dirt. You couldn't do anything like that. And it really opened my eyes to how that was done, what an amazingly creative human being Old Tom was. I don't think he gets quite enough credit for his ability to see those things in the land, the natural land, and to make golf holes that are still great. The Alps at Prestwick is still one of the greatest holes in golf, and it exists exactly the way it existed when he laid it out in 1851. And the sixth at Cruden Bay has been changed a lot by Tom Simpson, but the natural green site that he found is still the thing that makes that hole amazing. And just all over the trail you see that. And particular gift for finding a great par 3, which you can understand that, because the first thing to do is find greens. You got to find natural greens. And when you find them, find something cool to hit to them from.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
If anybody's looking to recreate that trip and you want a lot of podcast episodes about it, Jonathan and I, and we'll bring Stephen with us. We'll be happy to go make that happen.
Yeah, no, I would do that with you in a heartbeat. Be a good guide. I know I did actually, I don't know if this will ever get published or not, but I did write a whole magazine about my experience on the Old Tom Morris Trail, and I know the people who run it are trying to get the magazine published. It's these days, if you're running a tour company, you are just buried every single year, all year long, so finding time to do something like that is hard. But it's out there,
Yeah.
and one day it might surface, and it would be a good guide for people if it does.
Very nice. Well, good stuff. Well, you've played some incredible golf, and so let's go back to your golf game. We ask everybody that comes on this show to tell us your most memorable golf shot.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, that'll be easy. And this is also ties into the book that I've just done. When I had that, moment of conversion to becoming a psychotic golfer, I naturally looked around me for other people that were golf addicts in my family. And the person that I zeroed in on was my wife's aunt, Ruth Ann Schwederman, who's 90-something now, maybe 94. But she was the 5-time champion, women's champion of her club in Ohio, Arrowhead Golf Club in Minster. So the thing I most wanted to do in life was to impress Ruth Ann as I learned to play golf. And I have played a huge amount of golf with Ruth Ann. And the most memorable shot of my life occurred at Briarleaf Golf Club in LaPorte, Indiana. Ruth Ann lives in Ohio, as you know, and I have relatives that have condominiums up in New Buffalo on the lake there at Michigan, so I play a lot around there. One of the places we play is Briarleaf Golf Club in LaPorte, Indiana. There is a bunker on the 18th hole, sort of a flattish bunker, maybe 125 or 30 yards from the green. Knocked my second shot into the bunker like the hack I was then and still am. But with Ruth Ann watching, I stepped up and hit a 7-iron to about 2.5 feet from that bunker and made par. And it was first time Ruth Ann was actually genuinely impressed. And that was something I wanted desperately. So I probably remember that as vividly as any shot I've ever hit. And I dedicated this book to Ruth Ann. Because I've never dedicated a book to anybody, but I couldn't do a woman's golf history book and not dedicate it to Ruth Ann because she's been my hero and my inspiration. And I'm going to go to New Bremen on September 8th of this year, and I'm going to go around Arrowhead with my hickory clubs with Ruth Ann in the cart, explaining to me what it is I need to do to strike the ball cleaner and better and to hold my putts more accurately. And I don't trust anybody for that more than a 5-time champion because it takes something to be the 5-time champion of anything. And
Right.
So I have endless admiration for Ruth Ann, and that's my most memorable shot.
You're still giving out golf tips. That's great.
Yeah, she's
If that
like,
doesn't prove that,
you're lifting
if
up.
that doesn't prove that golf is about who you play with, then I don't know what
Right.
does.
Exactly. She's like, you're lifting up. You keep that club low. You're just a minute you get back, you're lifting up. You're lifting up. That's why your ball's going where it's going. She never minces words. She just tells you what you're doing wrong. And but it's a beautiful thing to have a person in your life like Ruth Ann. So I'm so lucky in that regard.
Well, another thing we like to do is what we call the quick 9. So just a little back and forth here. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick this one out. What is the favorite course that you've played?
Glen Eagles, San Francisco.
Wow, that was quick.
No doubt
You
about
have
it.
to look that one up.
Glen Eagles is a 9-hole golf course slashed into the side of a hill in McLaren Park, San Francisco, right next to a public housing project. It draws the best golfers in the San Francisco Bay Area to play there by far. I had the privilege of being in charge of the men's club there for a couple of years, and I think I had 60 players, of which about 45 were scratch or lower. And these people could just play golf. It's a tough golf course. It's a scruffy little golf course with wickedly difficult and fast greens. And so that's my favorite place I've ever played. It's kind of an inspiration for the club that's Sweetens Cove hat you have on, is it not? So
Absolutely.
It's a big inspiration for Sweetens Cove. And Patrick, one of the original guys there, is the Glen Eagles man.
Yeah.
So, Glen
Very
Eagles
nice.
by far.
I met Patrick last year
Yeah.
at Landman. Yep.
Yep.
So good stuff. All right, what course is at the top of your bucket list?
Woking, which is Bernard Darwin's home course in England. Deal, which is Royal and Rye. The courses along the south coast. I want to make a grand tour of English golf, and if I get to do this Darwin biography, that'll necessarily be a part of it. I've played a lot of Scottish golf, but I haven't played nearly as much English golf. I've only played Royal St. George's and Hoylake, and I want to make a grand tour of English golf, but I want to play Woking most of all. And second after that, Worplesdon. Sound like I'm in a Harry Potter novel, I realize, but Worplesdon is Joyce Weathered's home course, and Woking is Bernard Darwin's home course. So two of my heroes, cheek by jowl there.
What is the best course that no one knows about?
The best course no one knows. Cullen, I would say, in northern Scotland, par 63. Cullen is a course that is distinguished by these giant eroding mountains that are called sea stacks, which are like 60, 70, 80 feet tall. They've been eroding ever since time began, and now they're just these sort of kind of snow cone sized mountains that are kind of all over the golf course. And old Tom went up there and made a course that you have to play to them, over them, around them, all over the place. It's just the wildest fun you can possibly have playing golf. It's not possible to leave Cullen without a smile on your face. It's ridiculous. It's like there's one par 3 there where you basically you have two choices. There's an 80-foot tall sea stack directly in front of you, and you can go over that. Behind it is the green. Or you can hit a wicked slice. That was the method I chose. A slice is one of my natural shots. You can hit a wicked slice that way out to the left and turns hugely and will run up to near the front of the green but not on it. And then you can chip up from there and maybe make a par. But so that's, I would say that.
I love it.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. All right. Who's in your dream foursome?
Oh, that's easily. I would say Tom Morris Jr., John Ball Jr., and Glenna Collette.
Okay.
Do you think you'd beat him? Think you'd come close?
Heck no. Are you kidding me? No, I am, and without question, I don't think this is a debatable point. I am the worst golfer ever to write seriously about the history of the game. Almost everybody that writes about golf in a serious way meant to become a professional player or a really good player. You know what I mean? I had a cup of coffee as a 12 handicap once, and I went immediately back to 14, and that's as low as I've ever been. I lack athletic ability, which is one of the central things you need to be good at golf. The only reason I can play at all is I have endless determination, and golf will succumb to that in a way that most other games will not. If you're a grinder, you can just keep that little ball in front of you. You can figure out a way to get it in the hole and make a score and win. And even for a person who has zero athletic ability, zero. I mean, I'm not making that up. I've made 3 holes in one. I've won a golf tournament. I tied for first in a tournament at Glen Eagles. I have, I've made an eagle. I've done all the things that you feel like you want to do in the game, because, I'm a person that doesn't give up, and golf will reward that enough times to keep you coming back. Not always. Most of the time, the lack of athletic ability tells the tale, and I'm the champion of the B flight, which is where I belong.
Well, I'm a 17, 18 handicap, so we'd have a good time together.
Yes, right. I play now only with hickory clubs. I have 7 handmade Scottish hickory clubs, and that's what I play with. And I can maintain an 18 with those, which I'm actually modestly proud of.
That's very nice.
That sounds like fun. All right. If you could only have one golf book, and I can't imagine you'll be able to do this, but what book would it be?
Playing the Like by Bernard Darwin. Definitely. That's my favorite golf book ever. That's the book that set me on the journey I'm on. The opening 4 essays are called Heroes of Old, and they're about John Ball Jr., Harry Vardon, James Braid, Sandy Hurd, and all the great heroes of the long golden afternoon. And it was those essays, in particular the one about John Ball, who is Bernard Darwin's hero of all heroes, that got me started wanting to do what I'm doing with the golf history. And the rest of the essays in there, the people in front is also in that book, are just amazing. He would cover golf for the Times, but he would also write a weekly column for Country Life, which was just about dimensions of the game, like that people in front essay that I mentioned before. He would have one called Black or Silver, which is a question you always have when you're playing hickory clubs because they rust. Do you want to keep them clean and clean the rust off every time you play, or do you want to let them black up a little bit, which they actually grip the ball better when you do that? And so it's just, he would write essays about that kind of stuff, Black or Silver, people in front, and they're just magical. He's as good a writer as anybody I've ever read, and I've read a couple.
I'm excited to read some stuff. All right. Well, you mentioned your hickories. What's the favorite club in the bag?
This is a tragic story because it just broke. It's a brassy that was made in 1913 by Robert Simpson at his shop in Carnoustie, and it still has the shaft in it that he put in there in 1913. A lot of hickory clubs will have broken shafts and they'll be replaced, and the heads and stuff will be the same. But this was original from 1913, and the face of it cracked, and so it's just on a wall retired. Or something. It's retired. Yes. Yeah. So the face of it cracked after, what is it, 120 some years of faithful service. So I guess you can't really be angry. But I have already lined up with a friend in the world of hickory golf to get another identical Robert Simpson brassy made at his shop in Carnoustie, but probably not with the same original shaft. That's the thing that I'll miss, is that those original shafts, the wood was better. The hickory wood was, obviously a lot of it has been harvested since 1910. But the original hickory trees were much better wood than the hickory wood you can obtain now to make modern replica hickory clubs, which people mostly play with. So I like to get a club that has an older shaft or an original shaft if I can, because as old Tom would say, those are the ones that have music in them and they play better.
What is your favorite snack on the golf course?
I do not eat on the golf course at all. I am a person who has a very, very finicky stomach, and anytime I eat, results are unknowable and uncertain. So the last thing I want to do is be out stranded on a golf course and eat anything. So I only drink water when I'm playing. I don't drink alcohol when I play, unless it's just like a party atmosphere, and I feel like I'm going to be uncivilized if I don't. But if I'm just playing my own golf, I don't drink. I am a person who enjoys alcohol. Probably a little more than somewhat, as Damon Runyon would say, when I'm not golfing. But I get dehydrated too on a golf course, and where I live, it's warm a lot, so you have to be careful about hydration and any kind of alcohol.
You don't want an iffy stomach when you got a 6-hour ferry ride back to
that is exactly
civilization.
Correct, Robbie. So I generally don't do it. If I did, I probably would like something like a Kind bar or an energy bar or something like that. Or bananas are my favorite food. They're just kind of difficult to carry in a golf bag.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, good.
I was going to say no haggis. What was it? Haggis? What did I have?
I have had haggis. Haggis is really, the problem with haggis is presentation. It's not any different than sausage. Most Americans love sausage. Haggis tastes almost identical to sausage, and in fact has most of the same ingredients. It's just the way they present it to you is singularly unappetizing. Whereas if you go to the fancier restaurants in Scotland now, you'll get haggis bonbons or haggis cupcakes, and they look edible. And then you eat them, you think, yeah, this is fine. My host, that was one of the requirements of going along the old Tom Morris Trail, was I had to have haggis. So I did at a restaurant called the Salt House, I think it was called, in Troon. Wonderful restaurant, and had the haggis bonbons, and they were great. It's a lot like sausage.
Mustard at the turn on the haggis. It was great.
Yep. Exactly.
There you go. All right. Favorite golf course logo?
Boy, that's a good question. Let me think a second there. Prestwick, I'll say. I love Prestwick, just that course. Most of the history that I've written about to date, a lot of it has unfolded at Prestwick. So I have a deep attachment to Prestwick. I've played it twice. I've walked it more times than that, and so I love their logo. I love everything about Prestwick.
Final question. Finish this sentence. The best part of golf is?
Companionship. I think if you look back on the history of the game, the one thread that runs all the way through it, it was as much about dinner and claret as it was about golf. And that's still true. When you go on a trip with your pals, yes, a lot of it is about the golf, but the majority of the time, there's a lot of time at night, a lot of time in the morning, a lot of time between rounds. And that's the most fun time, to my way of looking at it. It's always been about that. And, that's the thing I think people need to keep in mind, is that golf is about who you're with and the friends. And in the book, Golf in the Kingdom, which is sort of a deeply philosophical book about the game, one of the women in it says that golf is one of the few ways that men understand how to express love for one another. That's an awkward thing for men a lot of the time, but golf accomplishes that in a language that they both understand. And I think that's a hugely, fundamentally true thing. And I feel like, my golf companionships with the people that I have deep golf relationship with, like Jim Hartzell, are some of the closest and best relationships I have. And that's just partly because, as the woman said, it's a way of us being comfortable expressing love for one another.
Yeah. Well, we always say golf is people, and it's more like you're describing perfectly who you're about, more about who you're with and what the scores are, or even how good of a course you got to play. Because hopefully you get to do it with somebody that you get to like hanging out with, and that's why we do this. We get to meet great people like yourself. Hopefully, maybe one day tee it up together. But yeah, Stephen, this has been a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. As I say, it's never easy to sell golf books, and every little bit of notice that you get helps you. So I'm thankful for that, and it's been fun. So I really enjoyed the conversation. You have a nice podcast, and I'll look forward to listening to it going forward, even when I'm not on.
Absolutely. Well, tell everybody, where's the best place to find your books?
If you live in the United Kingdom, you can just go to your local bookshop. I always like people to buy a book in a bookshop. And one of the reasons I like that my books are published in Scotland is that they get in bookshops. In the United States, you can only get my books online. You can buy them from Amazon, and you can buy them from Barnes & Noble online. The way the golf industry works, book industry works in the United States, if you're published by an independent publisher, you cannot get in a United States bookstore. So Barnes & Noble will sell you my book online, but they won't stock it in their store. And I don't know, for me, I don't make any money on these books. I just like the emotion of seeing my name on a book on a shelf in an actual store, So that's probably because I suffer from vanity, one of the many deadly sins. But that's neither here nor there. So I would prefer that you ordered it from Barnes & Noble, because they are, in the end, a bookshop, even if they won't stock my book. So I'd say get it there. But Amazon is the easiest place, and you can get that at Amazon worldwide.
Well, sounds like everybody needs to make a trip over to the UK, go into a bookstore while you're playing golf, and grab your books there. So, but yeah, Stephen, it's been a lot of fun. I highly encourage people to read your stuff. I'll make Jonathan read a book, and we'll get one for him. But no, I think more people need to learn and appreciate the history of the game, and I think you do a great job of encouraging people to do that. So thank you, and thanks for Frank for joining us on the Whole Story Podcast.